really about policy or is it about party? Are you going to defend the policy regardless of what party it's under? That is something that is exposed here in this debate with Briahna Joy Gray on Piers Morgan's show about the healthcare system. Let's go ahead and dive in. It is a fiery moment.
But I think the real point is that both sides of the establishment political aisle are desperate to make this a conversation about something other than the fact that we have perhaps the most perverse healthcare system, or insurance system is a more accurate way to put it, compared to every other similarly wealthy country in the world. The reason you're seeing this outrage and sometimes kind of performative thirsting for the shooter is exactly because 68,000 people every year in the United States of America die because people like Brian Thompson, who run companies like United Healthcare, deny insurance claims that could have saved the lives of their loved ones. And while there were a lot of words spent talking about the real fear of the people on the subway who had encountered Jordan Neely, it's important to note that Jordan Neely hadn't physically engaged with anybody on the subway.
Well, I'm going to come to Jordan, just to be clear. I'm going to come to... Wait a minute. Let's separate the two stories, though.
That was just an aside. So much... so many such words, passions, empathy was directed in that direction. But Brian Thompson's actual crimes of having a direct connection to mass death and suffering for tens of thousands of Americans on a yearly basis.
Well, hang on, you said
I
crimes.
think it's going under-examined.
Okay, you said crimes. What was
Denying...
what was the crime?
Unfortunately, the United States, our legal system is designed by people in power who enrich themselves, who don't make denying people's health care that results in mass death.
Yeah, but you called it a crime, though. You called it a crime, but it wasn't a crime. He wasn't a convicted criminal.
I would define it colloquially as a crime, and the fact that Luigi allegedly took matters into his own hands is because no political system or legal system in the United States of America has been willing to step up.
Actually, we don't even know that, do we?
The mass murder that's been executed on the part of the American healthcare system.
I would say, look.
Let me pause here, and to Bree's point, I just want to remind everybody about the Sackler family. And the opioid crisis in this country, how they were able to continue to sell and prescribe and continue to produce Oxycontin, even though there were people who were dying. There were people who were having like serious complications from the medicine, and they continued to push it on the doctors and tell the doctors if they're still having pain to increase the dose. This is something that, I feel more people should talk about it. But it definitely affected the Rust Belt area because they targeted a lot of these rural communities that had jobs that required physical strain, such as like lumber yards or the coal mines, etc. And the Sackler family, basically just got like a slap on the wrist. Richard Sackler should be in jail. He should not be living somewhere down in Florida trying to mind his own damn business after all those people that he killed. Don't forget the Sackler family bribed the FDA to say that the label warning was okay so that the drug could get through. This wasn't the first time. The Sackler family, going back before Richard, don't forget his father was also doing this. They've been pushing drugs and these type of prescriptions onto the American people, and they made a fortune out of it, and none of them went to jail for it. So to Bree's point, when she tells Piers it was a crime, it is a crime. The fact that Brian Thompson and all these healthcare CEOs continue to allow American people to die, just like the Sackler family did, I do consider it to be a crime. You're talking about the U.S. biggest criminal here. Look at what they do to these people. But Brian Thompson lives very well. He was living very well. He had great money. And for all the people who continue to say, oh my God, but people lost their father. The wife lost a husband. From what I read, they were separated, number one. And number two, make sure you have that same empathy when people are killed by the police. Make sure you have that same empathy when unarmed black men are killed by the police, okay? Because some of the same people who out here crying their eyes out for Brian Thompson, a rich man who gave zero fucks about people dying who couldn't afford to pay to have surgeries or treatment. Make sure you have that same empathy for unarmed black men that are killed by the damn police.
We don't know really enough about this guy yet. It looks to me like he's a bit of a narcissist.
What do you mean?
I think he was a narcissist. I think that he was clearly unhinged. I'm not sure that he's the great Robin Hood. Hang on.
Which guy? I'm sorry.
Hang on.
Luigi,
the shooter,
or,
right?
Brian Thompson.
The one who shot Brian Thompson, Luigi, right? I'm just not sure that he's this great, heroic guy standing up against the healthcare system. I suspect
I'm not talking about that. This isn't about Luigi, who may or may not, he's been arrested, he's been charged. We may or may not know that he's the actual shooter. I'm talking about the public reaction to Brian Thompson's death.
No, I understand that.
We do know about Brian Thompson.
No, I understand that.
We know about United Healthcare, and that's the root of the discontent. That's the root of the public outcry. Luigi is just a vessel through which people are expressing their deep frustrations with the American healthcare system. So the question is, if you don't want murders like this to be happening, assassinations to be happening like this in the street, and I'm someone who does not believe in the death penalty and don't condone these kinds of vigilante instances of violence in either case. But if you want to get to the root of why people are so deeply unhappy, you have to, it resonates so deeply with people that this has happened, you have to get to the root of why there is this deep well of tragedy, despair, and outrage in the United States of America. And that has to do with what Brian Thompson has chosen to do with his life, and what companies like United Healthcare have chosen to do to the American people.
But just to be clear, before I go to Natalie to respond to that, do you feel any empathy for Brian Thompson and his family?
I have infinite empathy for any individual as a person in their personal capacity. As his role as the CEO of United Healthcare, I'm afraid I'm with the overwhelming majority, bipartisan majority of the American people who say, I'm saving my empathy for people who are much more vulnerable, and have caused a lot less harm.
So to be clear, you don't have any empathy for him after he was executed?
Notice how Piers Morgan always wants people to have empathy for those that are in power. He wanted you to have empathy for Israel, who's in power. Do you condemn Hamas? And now he wants you to have empathy for Brian Thompson, who was in a position of power. Why doesn't Piers Morgan have that empathy for the people that are stomped on by those powerful figures? It's just something that I've noticed. That's all.
I personally don't.
Right. Okay. Well, at least you're honest. Let me go to Natalie Winters. I mean, I find this staggering. You've got to remember, the left is supposed to be the party that cares so much. All of them have their Be Kind hashtags. They're the caring ones, the kind ones. And they can't even bring it in their hearts to say they find a shred of empathy for a man who's just been executed, who's the father of children, the husband of a loving wife, and so on. I find that just staggering, that you can't, on a human level, have empathy for the murder of someone, but also make your point about the system in which he was an executive. What's your response?
I mean, it's absolutely shocking. And look, what it gets to the core of is the continued dehumanization of people, because in the sort of culturally Marxist paradigm of oppressor versus oppressed, you're allowed to do whatever you want to someone who has allegedly, or in this case, I'm not a supporter of the United States healthcare system or apparatus. Believe me, there's so many problems that need to be fixed and adjusted there. But condoning, which is in effect what these two panelists are doing, the assassination of him by a roundabout way by saying, well, the healthcare system, you just told me that you had absolutely no empathy and that you think what people are doing by gunning down healthcare executives because of bad decisions.
And by the way, I do not condone vigilante violence in either instance. So don't misrepresent my view. If you can make your case without telling a lie, miss, then you should do it.
Oh my God. So I don't think that she was ready. I think her name is Natalie. Was she ready? I don't think she was ready. She wasn't ready. Can we all say Natalie wasn't ready? Because Bree said miss.
You just for the 68 million Americans and their families who are killed every single year by the
over each other. We can't hear you.
United Healthcare system with
don't talk over each other. We can't hear you. Okay, look, listen, Briahna, I'll let you speak, Briahna. Let Natalie have her say, and then I'll let people respond.
By the way, if you think Luigi Mangione is someone who you maybe have empathy or sympathy for, this is someone who had a very privileged upbringing, background, very wealthy family. The CEO of United Healthcare is someone who came from a working class family, went to state schools, didn't go to the University of Pennsylvania. Like I said, I'm not defending the healthcare system writ large, but to say that you don't have empathy because you view him as an oppressor of the American people is a perversion, not just of the system of law and justice in this country, but that's extreme. You just said you don't have empathy for a man who was murdered in cold blood on the streets of New York. So what do you have for him?
You are
Sympathy?
obsessed with this oppressed language. It seems to be a bit of a kink.
You are so much so that you just said you don't have empathy for a murder victim.
I said, let me be clear. I said, as a person, interpersonally, of course, he has a family, and those people are feeling grief, and those people, as far as I know, are innocent in all of this. But the question is, here's the real question. Why are we asking random pundits, who might personally have been victimized, by the way, by someone like Brian Thompson, why they would have empathy for him and their family, while there's no question being asked about who has empathy for the tens of thousands of Americans who are killed every year by the policies that Brian Thompson has made millions and millions,
Clay,
tens of millions of dollars off of. Why are we talking about the fact that this 25-year-old, 26-year-old alleged perpetrator, went to an Ivy League school when obviously he was so still financially precarious, or obviously we don't know, the facts will come out. But the fact that someone who is relatively privileged in the United States of America can still feel so overwhelmed by our healthcare system that they would go to these lengths, that people who are relatively affluent still find themselves in medical bankruptcy, as you so rightly pointed out earlier, Piers Morgan, that 50% of families that have a cancer diagnosis in their family in the United States of America go bankrupt. That is where the moral outrage should lie. But when you go
don't get me wrong. Listen, I think
Peers who have wealthy, affluent homes,
Briahna,
the focus seems to be on the family of the millionaire and not on the families of the people who have been terrorized by the healthcare system.
You made your point.
We're going to drop a beat for Bree because she went all the way in there. She brought it right back to the core issue, which is, where is the same sympathy and focus for the people who have been affected, who have been victims of this decrepit healthcare system? And I want to remind everybody, Piers Morgan lives in a country where everybody has healthcare. So Piers, you can fall all the way back. We're going to drop a beat there for B. We're going to drop it. Here it comes. Let's go. Hey. Dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat. Feel the heat. All right. Let's get back into it, ladies and gentlemen. We had to do that one. We had to do it. Let's get back in.
Listen, I'm in London at the moment. In the UK, we have the National Health Service. It's free healthcare for all. So I find the whole system in America completely baffling, that a country of your size and power and economic muscle can't have a better system where people don't fall through the cracks in such large numbers. I completely agree. But that is a separate issue to the execution of someone in the street. Clay, I could see you were rolling your eyes there.
But it's not a separate issue.
Well, let me bring Clay in.
It is a separate. Piers, I'm in Israel right now. I just been touring a lot of the kibbutzes where there were people who were murdered because they were Jewish. I can't help but see the analogy here. You can be upset with a larger societal issue. It does not justify murdering people because of it. And if you are making that argument, and Briahna is making that argument, I'm sorry, her brain is broken, because what she is saying is, I'm so upset about the healthcare system that I believe that assassinating an innocent person who has never been convicted of any crime in cold blood on the streets of Manhattan is okay. Then your brain is broken. If you don't.
Of course, he's in Israel, guys. He's in Israel, and he cares more about Brian Thompson being killed in New York than he does about all those Palestinian kids that have been killed in Gaza. You see how people really expose themselves? This man is sitting, who looks kind of like Max Kellerman, who used to be a part of First Take. I don't know if everybody watched the show First Take. Stephen A. Smith used to be a part of First Take, and it was him and Max Kellerman. I'm not sure if Stephen A. is still there. Anyway, long story short, he kind of looks like a bootleg Max Kellerman. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. Do you see how people who don't have any sympathy for the Palestinians that have been killed and continue to defend Israel, like him and Piers Morgan, notice how they have all this sympathy for Brian Thompson, One person who's responsible for all those deaths of people, denying their insurance while getting wealthy himself, I might add. But he doesn't seem to have that same type of empathy for all the Americans that died because they didn't have the health care insurance, or the insurance wouldn't cover their treatment.
Don't have empathy.
That's
for
not
a
what I'm
father,
saying, and the audience
for
is
a
intelligent
husband.
enough to have heard what I've actually said.
You said you didn't have empathy for the killing of a man because you were upset about the larger
Briahna Joy
societal
Gray,
issue of healthcare. That is not any different
that he is a person in
than
this
you
private
saying
capacity.
when you are
I do
seeing
not have
what
empathy
happens
for
when
the
someone is
CEO
killed
of
because they're
United
Jewish,
Healthcare.
that you're
And
not
by
happy
the
about the
way,
situation here.
Neither
It's
do
justifying
millions of Americans who've been victimized by Brian
a larger
themselves.
societal issue that you don't like. And by the way, this is not a healthcare debate.
Yeah, I want to play. I want to play two. I want to play two.
It is a healthcare debate.
Hang on. I want to play.
It is a healthcare
Hang
debate.
on, Briahna.
It's a murder debate.
Yeah, it's a
murder debate,
I
not
agree.
a healthcare debate.
People are not excited about. Wait a minute. People are not excited about murder. There are thousands of murders that happen. Well, maybe not thousands, but hundreds, whatever, dozens of murders that happen every day in the United States of America. And those perpetrators are not being celebrated by the public. The public right now is feeling empathy for Luigi. They are feeling some kind of catharsis, schadenfreude, whatever you want to call it.
So you're feeling empathy for an executioner, but not the person he executed.
He's a cold-blooded assassin. No one should be feeling empathy for him. He's a
The same way you guys feel empathy for Netanyahu. Piers Morgan, you feel empathy for what happens to people in Israel. Oh God, they brutally butchered 1,200 people, which the number kept changing over and over again, but you'll never hear them say brutally butchered those Palestinians. All those women and children. Piers Morgan and fake Max Kellerman, these two guys have more sympathy and energy for Brian Thompson than they do for the kids, the babies that have been ripped apart in Gaza. They don't have empathy for them. They got more empathy for this rich ass white dude that was walking down the street who made a living out of killing people. They got more empathy for him than they do for those babies that were killed in Gaza. You tell me if it makes sense to you.
rich kid with a broken brain,
Totally agree.
probably like you.
Okay, I want to play two clips now. I want to play, first of all, a mashup of the reaction to our Taylor Lorenz Joy clip, which is...
I think this is a big thing that you see a lot of times too. Like he said that Briahna has a broken brain. So you can agree, you may agree or disagree with Bree on certain things, but Bree is a Harvard educated lawyer. Like, let's not sit here and try to downplay. You know what I mean? Let's not sit here and try to downplay that.
Gone very big in America. Let's watch this.
That is this ideology. She has joy for a guy getting murdered in the streets of New York.
I just feel like saying that you feel joy over someone getting assassinated, like even if you do feel that way, I just don't think it's helpful to say that.
She in her mind is like a man that worked for a company at the highest levels died, so she feels joy. Okay.
And now this woman is all over online on her Substack and elsewhere trying to justify this man's murder, and goes on with Piers Morgan on his YouTube show last night.
Wow, we have a real problem in this country. The left has a real problem.
But there
all these people, not all of them, most of these people supported everything that Israel was doing, by the way.
Is something deeper, a sickness that is going on in our political class, best exemplified by the absolute nut job, Taylor Lorenz, who used to work for the Washington Post. She appeared on Piers Morgan yesterday, and she said that she felt actual joy when the United Healthcare CEO was murdered on the street.
Now, John, before I come to you, I want to play Joe Rogan, who interestingly had this take.
I don't think this guy was a professional. I think this guy, if I had to guess, some guy who got fucked over. Apparently that company is really bad on denying claims.
34% denial rate.
Normal's
like,
like 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those guys.
I don't think anybody's going to be crying too hard over that guy.
Yeah, maybe his family, but that's about it.
Yeah.
It's a dirty, dirty business. The business of insurance is fucking gross.
No, but Joe, I mean, it's interesting there. Joe Rogan, he didn't come out and say he felt joyful, but certainly no great tears being shed, no great expression of sympathy. you know, as Briahna, I mean, I wouldn't have phrased it the way she did. And I think to admit you have no empathy for someone when they've been murdered is very bizarre.
Joe Rogan and I had the same take.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm about to make the
Joe
point.
Rogan and I had the exact same
Allow me
take.
to conduct.
They did. And this is something I want to point out. Is it really about policies or is it about party? Because why doesn't fake Max Kellerman have that same criticism towards what Joe Rogan just said? Why doesn't he say that Joe Rogan's brain is broken? Oh, no, we can't go there because Joe Rogan endorsed and supported Donald Trump. So is it really about the policies, ladies and gentlemen? Is it about policy and principle? Or is it about backing and supporting the party or the political ideology, no matter what cost, even if it's wrong? So this was a really revealing moment. So I'm glad that Piers did show that Joe Rogan clip, because it goes to show you the number of times you heard them say the left has lost it, the left this, the left that. Joe Rogan said the same thing that Briahna Joy Gray said. So is his brain broken too?
My own interviews, Briahna, if you don't mind, which I mean, there's not a massive amount of difference in response there. So is there a point here that the issue of healthcare in America is angering so many Americans because of these denial rates and so on, that this was almost an inevitable conclusion to this, that somebody at some stage was going to turn violent?
Yeah, let me respond to Clay, your question, and also the clips. First and foremost, I for one have said that I'm against vigilante violence. I have the capacity to feel empathy for unarmed individuals who get killed. What I find fascinating about the framing is, where is the pearl clutching? Where is the outrage? It seems very selective, right? So if you're in Israel, Clay, I'm glad you're there. Talk to everyone. Go visit the West Bank and talk to Palestinians if you truly want to have empathy. When you talk about framing, right, I think Clay said, you know, just because you're angry about a system doesn't give you the right to commit vigilante violence. I agree. Just because you're angry and you think that Donald Trump won the 2020 election that he lost, it does not give you the right to be part of an incited violent insurrection where you hurt and harm Capitol Police, take a shit in the U.S. Capitol. Some people come armed to assassinate people. By the way, just over the weekend, Donald Trump said he would pardon those people, traitors, violent insurrectionists whom he called hostages. I see no condemnation. I see celebration from the right. Another story about murder, how common it is. Another Daniel Perry, a white man, a veteran. He was convicted, Piers, just a couple of months ago. He was convicted by a jury of our peers for killing an unarmed white man who was attending a BLM rally with his black girlfriend. Governor Abbott of Texas, do you know what happened? The story no one talks about. Governor Abbott of Texas pardoned this man who was convicted by a jury for killing an unarmed white man. MAGA celebrates it. So when do we celebrate and when do we not? And right now, to go to your question, this comment that Joe said and what Briahna said and what I said is the reaction to the murder of Brian Thompson is what I'm fascinated about. It is inevitable, I believe, to answer your question directly, in a country, the most powerful, wealthy country on earth, right? That where we pay more money than any other country for healthcare, where so many people, so many adults, their number one debt, Piers, is medical debt. I had a daughter who is a stage 4 cancer survivor. She 5 years on, she's cancer free, full liver transplant, she's a little diva. A person like myself, Piers, the only reason I had insurance is through my wife, who's a doctor. We're pretty privileged compared to most people. If I wasn't able to get help from my family and friends, I would be in debt. I would be $200,000 in debt. Piers, I had to do a GoFundMe, and that's me, a person with relative privilege. So look at the reaction right now. And I keep telling people, for CEOs, I mean this sincerely, if you are in healthcare, if you're a billionaire, if you are a CEO, if you're a 1%, look at the bipartisan rage from Briahna to Joe Rogan about the healthcare system, where, you know, millions of Americans, Piers, I don't think they're evil. I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like this in my life. I know deeply empathetic people who looked at this murder and said, I feel bad for Brian, but you know what? United Healthcare screwed over a lot of people.
Okay.
I have a story.
Okay.
And the system has to change.
Well, listen, I think the system has got to change. I totally agree with that. Let me bring
and let me just say something else here too, to Piers. Like I said, you live in the UK. You guys have nationalized healthcare system. You can go to the hospital and not have to stress. Not to mention you have paid maternity leave too. So you guys actually, you can go to the hospital and not have to worry about if you're going to break the bank afterwards. So until you have that lived experience, please don't try to tell us about the healthcare issue, because you don't have to deal with that. We'll go on a little bit more here.
Actually, I want to pivot to Daniel Penny now, because it really has been a tale of two vigilante stories.
Oh, no more Daniel. I'm sorry. I forgot we go into the Daniel Penny part. I can't hear the Daniel Penny anymore. We've talked about that enough. I've heard about it enough there. I think we're actually going to go ahead and stop right there. I think that's pretty good enough. But guys, when you get a chance, please go watch the entire segment of this. I mean, I actually watched Briahna Joy Gray's discussion or debate with Glenn Greenwald earlier today too. I saw that one, and that was also I came in during the part about Daniel Penny, and I saw another discussion about Daniel Penny earlier today. So I just need a little break from the Daniel Pennies. But anyway, check that one out too. That was really good. I think Bree won that debate. Some people think that Glenn did, but you guys watch it and let me know. Or if you did watch it, how do you know? You know, what do you think? Or who do you think won that debate? Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.